Hello everyone and welcome to the Tradcast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is episode number 5, and on today's show, myself and teammate Justin Vickers are going to be discussing some postseason scouting and some winter activities that can carry you through to the next season. Grab a cold beverage and relax, because we're jumping right in to today's show. Alright everyone, welcome to today's Tradcast, the podcast that connects traditional archery enthusiasts. Today is January 24th, and it is an absolutely gorgeous day today here in upstate New York. The temperature here in the truck is reading about 30 degrees, and it's supposed to warm up actually into the low to mid 30s today, so it's a great day here. I'm actually heading up to, once again, check my trail cameras like I do every Saturday. I try to come up here and check all my trail cameras to see what's been going on the past week. Now, a couple of things that I wanted to touch on here to start is last week on the podcast I mentioned how I don't typically have a lot of deer activity on my properties in the wintertime. But I tell you what, with the winter that we're having this year, we don't have a lot of snow. I mean, we've got less than, I would say, 8-9 inches of snow, and we had a couple of days where it really warmed up and it got up into the 40s and it melted a lot of snow. So right now I'm actually noticing a lot more activity on my properties than I typically do during the winter time, because the deer are still able to kind of get in and paw off my food plots. I went up, checked my cameras last weekend, and had a lot of deer activity around. Had a lot of deer pawing in my clover plots yet. And I had a lot of activity at one of my mock scrapes that I keep doctored year-round. And I'll tell you what, this is a great tip for anybody that wants to get trail cam pictures throughout the whole year. One of the best ways that I found to do it, especially the last couple of years, has been by keeping my mock scrapes freshened up with the Smokies preorbital gland lure. I put some of that on the overhanging lick branch, and it does a really good job. And I tie I take a zip tie, and I just zip tie a little piece of a scent wick on the overhanging lick branch. This way here, when I put that Smokies lure on that wick does a good job of holding the scent for a long time, and it'll keep your mock scrape active. And I'm getting a lot of pictures right now of my mock scrapes. It's a great way to get pictures of bucks. The last 2 seasons, I've gotten pictures of shooter bucks at my mock scrapes after the season had already closed. So I'm having good results with that. Another thing I wanted to mention here before we jump into the interview is I've actually been shooting my cedar arrows a lot more, because I started out shooting carbons, and I thought that I was pretty much expecting to use carbons. But when I got my whip, I had Denny make me a dozen of arrows, of cedar arrows, to go along with the bow. And I to be honest with you, I wasn't really planning on using them, but I've been shooting them, and they're flying a lot better than my carbon arrow that I have, that I thought I'd be using. They're flying a lot more consistent. They just seem to, I don't know if it's because of the more helical fletch and the feathers. I don't know if it's because they're a heavier arrow. But all I can really tell you is that my wood cedar arrows are certainly flying more consistently than those carbons that I had. And in fact, I just messaged Denny last night and pretty much told him I wanted to order another dozen of arrows that I want to use strictly for my broadheads, for my bows. So I plan on shooting cedar arrows, at least at this point, because they fly better. And another thing I wanted to just go over real quick is kind of a shooting form tactic that I've been doing, and that's, I'm finding the last couple of weeks here shooting in my basement, I'm finding that I'm more accurate and I'm more consistent if I guess I'm referring to this as squaring up to the target visually before I even draw my bow. So before I even draw my bow, I'm looking at the spot that I want to hit, and I'm squaring up to it. And what I mean by that is I'm squaring my shoulders to it, and I'm kind of taking my eyes and I'm trying to get my eyes down at the same level of this spot. So I basically, when I'm looking at my spot, before I even draw or think about drawing or shooting, I'm taking the time to square up visually to the target to where my eyes are on a parallel level with that exact spot that I want to hit. And then from there, I go through my shooting sequence. And I don't know, it might sound a little bit weird, but it's just something that I've noticed that's helping me be more accurate if I take the time to really concentrate and square up visually to the target before shooting. So just a little tidbit that I wanted to add in there. But now we're going to break into an interview that I just did a few moments ago with Justin Vickers, my teammate here at Vantage Point Outdoors. And we just discussed some tactics and some things that you can do during the postseason to help increase your chances going into the next hunting season. So let's jump right into that recent interview with Justin. Welcome to the show, Justin. How's it going today?
Hey, Chad. It's going pretty well. I'm just coming in from doing a little snow shoveling. We actually got about 3 inches of well-packed snow last night, and just clearing the driveway out for now. And this is actually the first significant snow, that we've had. We've gotten a few inches here and there over the past month or so, but they just kind of goes away after a couple days. This kind of snow seems like it's something that could stick for a while. So just getting that cleared out now, and maybe later on I'll get my little girl out to build her first snowman for the winter.
Awesome. Sounds like sounds like it'll be a fun time.
Yeah, I think so. Good day for it.
Yeah, now I wanted to have you on the show, Justin. This is your first time on the show. I wanted to have you on because I wanted to discuss, some wintertime activities that all hunters can do, which, is going to help increase their chances, at deer the following season. And, a lot of guys, once you get to wintertime, it's been a long hunting season. A lot of guys just get emotionally kind of out of the hunting, thoughts. But, there's actually, a lot of key things that you can do during the wintertime, which really can help you, build your way into the next season. So I wanted to touch on a few things with you today on that. And I also wanted to have you on the show because, a lot of guys probably don't know yet here from the podcast, but you and I are actually teammates on the Vantage Point Outdoors team. And, I plan on talking to you regularly throughout the year, discussing how things are going for each of us in the woods and how our hunts are going. And I just wanted to kind of bring you on the show here today to introduce you to everybody listening to the podcast and also to discuss these wintertime activities. So how does that sound?
Absolutely. No, it's been a great experience so far, and I think we got a lot to offer between the two of us. In showing, other people our experiences and, going through the whole year, I guess, and not just hunting season, going through the whole year. And, I think it's going to be a good time. I think it'll be great. And it's been a pleasure so far. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been, I've had a great time chatting with you, and we pretty much talk every day,
Sure.
Mostly through through Facebook messages and stuff, but we chat every day, and pretty much we chat about deer hunting every day. So
that's right. Hey, it's always on our mind. So
yeah, pretty much. Well, Justin, I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about our current situations. Obviously now anybody listening to the podcast or anybody who even follows the Vantage Point Outdoors page pretty much knows that I've recently made the transition over to shooting traditional bows, and I'm very committed to that, and I don't plan on touching a compound bow again, honestly. But now you are still going to remain a compound shooter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I am. I am going to stick with compound. I actually just ordered a new Carbon Spider turbo, and that's going to be my new shooter bow for the summer season. I do a lot of 3D shooting both in the wintertime and the summertime, and that will turn into my hunting rig for the fall. I got a lot of respect for you going full traditional. I think it's great, and I think it's also a good thing that you kind of just put down the compound altogether and really concentrate on the traditional part of it and getting good that way. I really won't rule out the possibility of going traditional, especially where I live now, which is down in the southern zone, Hudson Valley area. There's 50 deer per square mile here, which is way more than what you get in northern New York. Where I'm from in the foothills of the Adirondacks, Herkimer County. You're lucky to see a good buck, or let alone a deer, for most of the season. So I really won't rule out the possibility, especially with the close encounters that I've had down here, where there's more deer, more better terrain, I guess you'd say, for getting close to them. So I think it's definitely been on my mind. I sit on the ground a lot in different ambush spots with my compound, and I really think there's a possibility that I may enjoy doing that type of thing with going traditional someday. Just not quite committed to make the full switch over just yet, but you may work on me a little bit and change my mind.
Well, for everybody listening, that's actually I've been giving Justin a few jabs here and there, but I'll do my best to try to get him into the trad camp. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I think if you're gonna hunt with a traditional bow, in my opinion, it's not something you can just dabble into. I think if you're gonna do it and be committed to it, you've got to make the 100% commitment and just jump in with 2 feet. So that's what I've done. I've always kind of been, accused of being a pretty stubborn person, and when I get something in my mind, very few, things are going to get in my way of accomplishing that. So that's where I'm at with the traditional bows. I've made the commitment to go to them, and I'm actually really enjoying shooting my traditional bows. And the main reason why I'm going to it, like I said before, is I personally think it's going to be an advantage for those in-close encounters on the ground. I'm fully aware that, I'm not going to be able to shoot deer at 50, 60 yards anymore. But, the terrain that I hunt here in northern New York, I'm usually into the thick stuff, where I have a better chance of encountering a decent buck. And, I can think of very few situations where I even have a shot over 30 yards, honestly, without having to squeeze an arrow through a bunch of tree limbs and stuff. So I don't think the distance is really going to come into too much. Yeah, there's going to be, a few situations that arise here and there, I'm sure, where, I could have killed a deer, a little bit further out. But I don't really hunt field edges other than my small food plots, which, I can pretty much shoot across those, even with my traditional bows. So I'm not worried too much about the distance factor. And I think, once that animal closes in to that 25 yards in range, I don't know, I just personally think, and I can see where the quick shooting style of a traditional bow is going to be an advantage if you can get accurate enough with it, which is, hopefully what I will accomplish by, just shooting thousands and thousands of arrows. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And Justin, I also wanted to touch on, winter scouting and a few things that we do this time of year to locate deer sign and, just add one more piece of the puzzle going into the next year. And, I'll take the lead on this, but, I do a lot of scouting this time of year, and it actually, this winter here has been ideal for it because, we typically get, anywhere from, 2 to 4 feet of snow honestly, at any given time here during the winter time in northern New York. But this year, we haven't had a ton of snow. And right now we've got, I would say, less than 8 inches of snow. So what I'm finding on my properties is typically my deer would go to winter yarding areas, but that really hasn't been the case this winter because the snow hasn't become too much of an issue. The deer can still navigate through it pretty easily. And I mean, deer in northern New York are very accustomed to dealing with snow. So 8 inches of snow on the ground for our deer here in northern New York really isn't that big of a deal. So, the things that I like to do is just, go through the woods and find a good, well-used runway and I've got several specific examples on my own 2 small properties where I found that deer will travel these runways, rather it's, April, July, hunting season, or even, here in January. There's some key runways, and I think that's the case with any property. I mean, deer have their specific ways of traveling through any given property, and as long as you don't have too much snowpack, which is going to force those deer, maybe into a yarding area, I think the wintertime is a great time to go out through the woods, any piece of woods, even state land, and just locate these runways. And what I like to do is just mark them with a GPS, and I'll take some pink flagging tape, and I'll just flag a tree near where that runway is, and then I can come back in the following spring or summertime, and I can further examine that runway to make sure that it's still active, and I think it can become a great hunting location for the next season and even several seasons. And that's an area that you found during the winter time when you can't do a whole lot else. You can't hunt. I mean, well, you can't deer hunt anyways. And I just think it's a great way to locate new hunting areas and do that at a time of year when most guys aren't even thinking about hunting. So, I mean, that's just one of the techniques that I use up here. What are some of the things that you do down there where you're at?
Well, I agree with you, and your pictures of your trail cameras really emphasize, what the deer activity is this winter right there in your area. I got to admit, I really haven't done a lot of food plot stuff. I plan on doing it now that I've, been acquainted with you as a friend and see what you do up there in northern New York and how well it actually works. Where I'm from in Herkimer County, the deer population is pretty low to begin with, but what we've noticed over many, many years of hunting there is once the hunting season's over and, typically, we're right there in that Tug Hill Plateau area where they usually get pounded with snow. These deer typically yard up and move out. They go to a nearby mountain called Oak Mountain. There's actually a lot of acorn mass there on good years. And there's been, people around the area that say, there's a big yard of deer that hang up there in the wintertime. Also, we've been out either rabbit hunting or predator hunting and noticed that really the only tracks out there in our woods, like I said, we don't have food plots to really keep them in. There's no, real fruit orchards or fruit farms or anything like that either. No agriculture. We're in the foothills of the Adirondack. So we've noticed that most of the tracks that you see are either predators or snowshoe rabbit tracks. So, as far as my deer scouting up there in the wintertime, it's really not much to it because they're just simply not there in the area. So we don't really mess around with putting out cameras much in the wintertime up there. We kind of just take them out right after hunting season. Now down here in the southern zone, Hudson Valley where I live now, the pressure, there's a lot of private estates. I actually hunt 426 acre private estate down here in Dutchess County, and what I found is if you got a big buck that you see and scout out in pattern during the summertime, your best chance at getting them is opening week of archery season. There's just too much pressure on the properties that people have the ability to hunt. There's properties surrounding these huntable lands where the deer know they can go for cover. And I'll tell you what, once the gun season starts, a lot of the yearling bucks that haven't been, gone nocturnal and pressured out by the bow hunters. All the yearling bucks get shot opening weekend, and all the deer kind of just get forced out, and they will not return until well after deer season. So even then, putting cameras out right now would probably be good, because I think now the deer would start to come back now that the pressure's been off them for a while. So that's what I plan to do. We really haven't had the snow cover like we do right now for this whole winter. So it's been tough to examine runways and know if they're still real active or not. So I think with this fresh snow we just got, I plan on going out and doing some predator hunting. And at that point, down here in the southern zone, I'll really be able to tell if the deer are coming back and using those runways. And I'll make my choice then to set out a couple trail cameras. And, the bucks may have shed their antlers already, but that may be a good thing, or a good time to get out there and run those runways, walk those runways, and see if there's any shed antlers hanging around as well.
Very true. Now, you just gave me an idea there with something they said, and I wanted to follow up with your comments about how the gun pressure, really kind of drives those bucks, kind of into that nocturnal activity, and just kind of makes them go underground. And that's very much the case here where I'm at in the northern zone. Our rifle season opens, we have our muzzleloader week usually opens up the Saturday of like October 20th, or whatever that Saturday is going to be, and we follow right into rifle season right after that. So pretty much our guns start cracking here, the last week of October, right on through the end of the season. So I would very much agree that early archery season is the best. It would be certainly your best opportunity to pattern a big buck. And I actually had that scenario kind of play out perfectly on my property back in 2013. Of course, that was the first year that I started doing my food plots, and I think I put in 3 or 4 that year. I had a couple in brassica and a couple in clover, and I had gotten one picture in 2011 and one picture in 2012 of, in 2011, I thought it was a 3.5-year-old buck. Looked like a really big buck, for a 3.5-year-old. But I only got the one picture of him. Never saw him while I was hunting. And 2012 rolled around. Again, this is all pre food plot stuff. But 2012, again, I got one picture of him again on the same exact day. Then I got a picture of him November 10th, 2011, and a picture of him November 10th, 2012. So the same date, just 1 year apart, in the same exact location. I got a picture of this buck, and I knew him. He just looked like a 4.5-year-old in 2012, and he just had a great big frame, looked to be like a big 10 or 11 pointer. Again, I never saw that deer, never had any other pictures of him the whole year. 2013 rolls around. I put in, a couple acres of food plots on my property, and I only have 45 acres up there, so we're not talking, a really big parcel. In fact, it's a very small parcel. But I tucked some food in there, and then 2013 rolls around, and I got literally over 100 pictures of that buck. He was 5.5 years old, to my estimation. And even today, that's the biggest buck I've ever had a picture of on trail camera. And he ended up being just a big 13 pointer. I'm not a real good, guy at scoring deer, from pictures, but I score. I kind of estimated him somewhere between 150 and 160 inches. And, I showed the picture to, some of my close friends, and they kind of agreed with me that, yeah, that buck is easily over 150. So, the moral of the story here is, I had that deer, with just adding in a couple of food plots, I had that deer literally glued to my property every day, just about. He was always nocturnal. I got one daylight image of that buck in mid-August, and he was in full velvet, and I never got one picture in daylight since mid-August. But he was on my food plots pretty much every day, or at least every couple of days. And there was one hunt that I can remember in particular. It was early season. In fact, it was during our early bow season, which actually opens before the regular season. We have a 4-day early bow season here in New York, up here in the northern zone. It was September 28th, and I hunted a little brassica food plot where I had the vast majority of my pictures of that buck, and he never showed up that night. It was warm, but he was in that food plot 20 yards from my ground blind 1 hour after dark, and that's the closest that I ever came to running into that deer, and that's the closest picture I ever got to any kind of shooting light. But I just, for me, that whole experience that year and capturing all those photos, it just reiterated in my mind that if you have food on even a small property, if you have food, you can definitely attract and pattern big mature bucks to your property. Rather not they're going to move during daylight, that's another issue, and it's certainly difficult to accomplish here in northern New York because of our long rifle season. But I'm certainly never going to stop trying, and I'm a firm believer that all big bucks have different personalities. Some are just more nocturnal than others by nature. And I mean, that buck may just have simply been one of those old, nocturnal bucks who was just simply never going to move, during daylight, unless he was, maybe chasing a hot doe. But I do think it's possible to, especially if you have a scenario where where you're passing a few small bucks and they kind of grow up, with using your property. If you can let them go to 1, 2.5, 3.5 years old, if you can let them kind of mature and always kind of be on your property, I think they're going to become very, very comfortable with being on your property, being in your food plots. And if you're not putting too much pressure on those areas during those first 2-3 years, I think you've got a shot at having that 3.5 or 4.5 year old buck come into those food plots during daylight. So I'm still kind of in the early stages of that. Some of my buddies have kind of criticized me and said, well, look what you didn't accomplish anything that year. You had that big buck, but you didn't kill him, and it didn't work for you. But, I've always kind of believed that, if you're going to manage your own property, that there really is no one particular season. All the seasons run concurrently. I mean, and the things that you accomplish one year are going to just build into the next season and the season after that. So I'm looking at it as not really individual seasons, but just managing those small properties and seeing what I can develop and accomplish over time. So I'm trying not to get too discouraged with what took place that season. I mean, I believe my neighbor actually killed that buck mid-November. I've never seen the buck, but Dad, I've never seen the buck since, so I'm assuming that he did kill him. But I'm not trying to get too discouraged about that. I'm going to keep doing what I do, keep these food plots going, and I'm hoping that in the next year, in the next couple of years, that I can start having a little bit more success on at least getting pictures of a few upper age class bucks. So that's just one thing I wanted to touch on with the food plots, and I know that you want to put in a few food plots also this year, and especially for your Herkimer County property, I really think that could help you guys draw in maybe 1 or 2 more mature bucks and keep them in the general area throughout the year. So
I agree. Well, because there really isn't much pressure up there as far as hunting pressure goes. Not nearly as much as there is in the southern zone of New York. I just want to touch base, going back just to the last segment here about the going nocturnal and stuff. There is no doubt that these mature bucks, once they get to a mature age, they've been through a few seasons of pressure, and there's no doubt that these bucks know what to do and where to go once that velvet peels off. It's just that critical time of year where, and like I said, if you pattern them, and what I've found is, especially down here in the Hudson Valley where I hunt, if you pattern them, and you gotta, strictly where they are traveling in the late summer, your best bet is to catch them October 1st, within that first week of archery season, because once that scent goes off, I think they're not stupid, and once that scent goes off in their mind, it's like a light switch, and I've seen it, and I've had it where I've had mature bucks and gotten shots off or killed mature bucks within the first week of archery season, and if you don't, it's like a light switch, and they are totally nocturnal, and your best bet after that is just being in the right place at the right time. Once the breeding season starts, catch something during daylight, like you said, you think maybe your neighbor had shot that 150 class buck you were watching on your food plots. He was simply in the right place at the right time. Otherwise, that deer had a really good chance of making it through that whole season. So I just wanted to touch base on that and reiterate that once the velvet peels off, I think it's the odds are more in the mature buck's favor than they are ours. So, and like you said, yes, I would like to get into the food plot stuff, especially up north. Down here, I only hunt down here in the southern zone until the gun season starts, simply because I'm one of the only, there's a couple guys that do bow hunt the same property, but we have the same, goals in mind as far as what we're going to take out of there with the bow. And then, there's a whole another group of guys that have permission to gun hunt there, and they just go crazy, fill their freezers, push the deer out, and the season's over. So I concentrate a lot of my time up north in Herkimer County in, somewhere around the third week of November, and I found that is the best time anyway, and we've killed most of our mature bucks during that time up there. We don't have food plots, we don't pattern the deer. It's simply being out there, still hunting, and just being in the right place at the right time. And we've killed a number of 200 plus pound bucks up there on their basic rut patterns, chasing does. And I found a few places this season where I got in deeper, where there's even more unpressured land, and I'll tell you what, I saw more deer sign and more deer than I've seen in any other season combined. I think it's a really, really good spot, choke full of spruce and balsam swamps, surrounded by nice ridges of hardwoods, and you could just tell you were in a spot where there wasn't much pressure, and the deer felt comfortable maneuvering around that woods. So that is one spot that I really want to concentrate on this summer, and hopefully clear out. We have had some logging done in there, which is good for the deer as well. The new browse pops up. I would like to take a couple of the more open spots, clear them down more, plant some food plots, and set some cameras and really see. I think it's got great potential for bringing in these unpressured deer to this particular property. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And a lot of guys look at food plots and they think, well, that's a spring or a summertime thing. But really, I actually do a lot of food plot work this time of year. Even though it's January and there's snow on the ground, this is a great time to get out there. And like I said, you can actually do all the manual grunt work and, clear these areas out, clear all the trees and debris and limbs. You can get a good majority of all that stuff done this time of year, so that when the spring, does come around, then you can start focusing on your liming and your fertilizing and your planting. And you don't have to, waste those valuable spring days and those early summer days with all that manual labor. You can get it done during the this time of year, and and plus I find it's a better time of year even to do that stuff, because you don't have to worry about deer flies and mosquitoes, and this is a very good time of year for anybody out there that's thinking about doing food plots. You don't have to have a big food plot. Even a quarter acre or half acre is plenty. And this is a good time of year to get out there and open those areas up, cut down trees, limb those trees up, get them out of the way, and get that land cleared and get your opening made now, so that when the springtime rolls around, you can start focusing on actually getting that food plot planted, and start attracting deer. And the one thing I will add, my personal opinion on small food plots is, at least it's been my experience, you're certainly better off putting those into clover, because clover is a very browse resistant forage, and a lot of deer can feed on a little quarter or half acre food plot, and they can pretty much feed on that all year and really never be able to wipe it out, because clover is just going to keep on regrowing, and the deer almost kind of act as a way to keep the food plot down to a level where you don't even have to even mow it, because the deer are in there consuming it. But because it's a perennial, and because it just keeps on regrowing, the deer really don't have time to wipe it out completely. Whereas I have had issues in the past with deer wiping out my brassica food plots really before hunting season even gets good, because once a brassica plant grows, it's not going to grow anymore, and it's just, once the deer start once they start eating it, it just keeps on going down and down and down, and then the next thing you know, you've got nothing left of your food plot. So I would put clover in any small food plots, and actually this year I plan on converting the vast majority, all but just a couple of my food plots over to nothing but clover, because that's what I have found to really be the best all year draw for deer, and provide those optimum hunting opportunities.
Okay, I am going to take your experience in the food plot world, and hopefully have you down to my family's property here in Herkimer County, and see what you think. What you have experience with all the forages that work best in northern New York, and that's I'm pretty excited to have been teamed up with you, and see the success that you've had with food plots. And your trail camera pictures don't lie. It's definitely been a prime thing for what you're doing up there, and the amount of deer that you've been holding on your properties. I'm excited to have you down and see what we can do in our woods as well.
Yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to the season, and I can't wait for spring. I mean, this winter time. I mean, even though it's winter and you can't do all of the things that that you want to do outside, you certainly can do a few. And and that brings me into another topic that I wanted to touch on today, Justin, and that's it just kind of keeps stemming off of the whole scouting theme. But there's actually a way that a guy can scout new property without even having to get outside, and that's through the use of aerial photos and aerial imagery that you can find online. And I've really begun the last 2 or 3 years. I've really been doing a lot more, going on to Bing Maps or Google Earth, and just examining properties, through these aerial photos. And I tell you what, it's a great way to really take a chunk of land and narrow it down to specific areas that you want to go in on foot and check out, whether that be along, creek banks or, rivers. You can locate these, or, inside corners of field edges. These are all areas that you can locate on these aerial maps from your desktop on a computer at home, and it can reduce the amount of footwork you have to put in your scouting later on foot, because you've taken the hour or two at home to examine these properties and really kind of narrow down key key features that you want to go in and further examine. So have you done any kind of aerial scouting in this way?
Absolutely, Chad. I've been in the profession of land surveying for the past 10 years or so, and ever since I graduated college. And that is something that, as a surveyor, we use a lot, not only to, plot out our control and stuff for our field books, but, I've taken that and morphed it into my hunting that I do, in the scouting. I found it's a good tool to, you can differentiate softwoods and hardwoods, so what's higher ground, what's lower ground. A lot of these sites are really, really good now. Bing Bird's Eye View is one of the best as far as clarity that I have found, and it's very, very easy to use. I use it a lot. I make plots out, and sometimes I choose a route that I may want to navigate and check out. I've used it to find areas that I feel would hold more deer, or in areas that I would see more deer. And I'll tell you, this season using them up in Herkimer County had allowed me to put a lot of miles on still hunting, and I found some really, really good spots that I think I'm going to want to venture in again. Places that areas in the woods that I never really knew about, beaver dams that I didn't know about, just areas where I like to concentrate, and I think I've seen more wildlife. The aerial views, I've used them religiously for the past 3 years or so. I mark out stand placement, stuff like that, keep it in a file. It's a really, really nice tool. I switch between map view and aerial view a lot. Some of them actually have the tax lot parcels marked out on them too, at certain zoom levels. Like I said, they show contour terrain in some sites as well. Really good tool. I use it religiously, and I think it's the best way, like you said, to scout or find new places that you may want to venture out in without kind of just wasting your time walking around. You can pick a spot. You can actually get some coordinates off of that and plug that into a GPS and go. It's really usable information, useful information rather, that I think any hunter should really look into using if they're not already.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I enjoy the on the foot, in the field scouting as much as anybody does, but because you can never replace, that on the foot scouting, because, regardless of what an aerial image shows you, you still have to confirm that with on the ground activity. But that being said, the aerial imagery scouting is certainly a great way to narrow to more rapidly scout that piece by air, and maybe rule out some areas that might not deserve as much attention as other areas. And I think that it would be specifically important, especially if you're a guy that's traveling out of state to hunt state land, or even hunt state land within your own state. It's a way to look at a bigger chunk of land and just like I said before, narrow it down to where you can just maximize your time and locate that sign quicker, without having to spook as many deer just walking through the woods aimlessly. So I think it's a great scouting tool. I've been using it myself the past several years, and I'll often find myself on the computer for literally hours just examining property. I mean, I know this past year I went down to Ohio to hunt some state land for a week, and I mean, I couldn't even count how many hours during last spring and last summer that I spent on Bing Maps and Google Earth, and examining all these state land properties that I wanted to that I was thinking about going to. And it definitely helped me pinpoint a couple of key areas. So this right here, and I could find these areas without even stepping foot in Ohio. But once I got to Ohio, it allowed me to jump to these spots quicker and scout these areas quicker, and just be that much more efficient on an out-of-state hunt So it definitely is something that you want to get into if you haven't yet. Like Justin said, I mean, Bing Maps, the aerial, the bird's eye view is certainly, it gives you a great look at the land. I mean, you can almost, I mean, I'm not really good with knowing, what kind of tree is what, but, to an experienced guy with with a good eye, you might even be able to tell what kind of trees those are, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, it depends on what time of year the picture may have been taken. Certain trees have, even if they're all green, they do have a certain tint to them that, some of the leaves are, on a pin oak or something is going to be a really darker green than say, silver maple or say a red maple or something. So, I love the fact that you can differentiate softwoods and hardwoods. I found a spot this year where I knew it was nothing but hardwoods, open hardwoods, choked full of beech trees. That's what it is. In Herkimer County, most of the hardwoods are just chock full of just small beech saplings. It's very tough to hunt. Most of your shots at deer are going to be, within 100 yards anyway. And just real hardwoods, as opposed to down here where I live in the Hudson Valley now. It's wide open hardwoods. There's barely any understory at all. But up north, I found a spot where I knew it was all just hardwoods, and I looked on Bing Maps or Google Earth, and I saw right in the middle of this, it's probably 4 miles off of the public road, but it's property that we have permission to hunt, watershed property, and we get a permission slip for every 4 years to hunt this land. And in the middle of this was a 12-acre hemlock stand. I went to it, and I was not surprised to find that it was a bedding area. And you could hunt all day long throughout this open hardwoods and really not see much. But you find a stand like that, and you can almost guess. Well, you got thousands and thousands of acres of hardwoods that they're going to feed in, but where are they sleeping? Are they sleeping in the open hardwoods on a ridge? Maybe. But I went to that spot, and sure enough, I found a lot of bedding spots there. So it's a really good tool for things like that as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Now, Justin, we're getting ready to come up here on time, but there's one more topic I wanted to jump in real quick before we close things out, and that's physical fitness. And when you stop and think about it, pretty much any hunting scenario that you come into, or no matter what game species you're hunting or what type of terrain you're hunting, physical fitness at some level is always going to play into that hunt and to that quality hunting experience. And I just know for myself that once I'm pretty good at keeping a routine, winter, spring, and even through the summer. But then the fall comes around, of course, it's hunting season, and you just get so focused on hunting, and you get so tired that time of year from hunting so much that I know for myself I kind of fall into this rut where I just simply go 2-3 months and don't work out and have just atrocious eating habits and eating junk food. So I like to once we get to this postseason time frame, back into the wintertime, I know for myself I like to use this time period as a time when there's not a whole lot else going on. I like to start refocusing on getting back into at least some kind of a physical fitness routine, so that this way here when the springtime rolls around and then summer, I'm not a mile behind the 8 ball and trying to cram everything in and make those fitness gains in just the summertime to get into the next hunting season. So I like to really focus on my fitness here in the winter and really kind of get your head back above water, so to speak, going into the springtime and summer when people are just generally more active and can kind of stay on a better schedule. Is this something that you do also, or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Chad, I'm actually just now getting back into the routine of getting back in the gym. I am super guilty of neglecting the whole exercise thing during the fall. I don't know if it's hunting season or if it is the holidays or maybe a bit of both. There's a lot more food around that time of year. I was in the gym religiously right up until the end of September. My family actually went on a cruise, and of course, cruise ships, you eat the whole entire week, all day long, it seems like. After that week, we came back, and then it was archery season. So, I kind of attribute that to, somewhat I'm in the hunting season groove where my mind is strictly on hunting and scouting and being out there, and then family time, in the evenings as well. And then the holidays roll around, and you eat. And then, New Year's rolls around, and most everybody's, resolution is get back in shape. But me as a hunter, as much as I want to be active during that whole, hunting season as far as the exercise program goes, I do tend to start back up just after New Year's. And, of course, once the winter is done and you get outside more, you're going with walks, with your family around the neighborhood, or you're out in the woods scouting, or you're clearing food plots, or mending your food plots. You're pretty active. So I've found that if you're not in really good shape by the time you're gonna hang stands in the fall, it could be fairly difficult to get those things up in the trees. If you're not in good shape, I'm not into the elk hunting. I'd love to go elk hunting someday, and I know you really have to be in great shape. Have some great strength and endurance for that. But even around here, just the normal hunting that we do, definitely a key thing is to be in somewhat good shape. So yes, I am getting back into the groove of the gym now. Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I mean, a lot of guys don't think about it, but like we said, physical fitness really does play a major role in how successful your hunt's going to be. And I can't personally think of any hunting style or any game species that being in a decent level of physical fitness isn't going to help make you that much better of a hunter. So I think it's something that is certainly worth mentioning and worth talking about. And I've even gone, I mean, pretty much my wintertime fitness regimen is pretty basic. I mean, we have a local YMCA here where I live, and I pretty much just go there for an hour and a half in the evenings, 4 or 5 days a week. And one day I might play basketball with the guys. We'll play pickup basketball for an hour or two, or the next night I might just simply do an hour-long elevated treadmill walk. I'm just trying to keep the legs moving, just do the basic things, just so I'm not like I said, falling into this big pit hole, so that when the next summer comes around and I have to just work really hard to get in shape for hunting season. I find if you focus on it during the winter time, this can be a good time of year to develop those good habits, develop that routine, and it makes it that much easier to carry it out on through the spring and summer. And then hopefully when hunting season rolls around, you've got that cardiovascular endurance, and you're ready to hunt and be more successful because of it.
Absolutely.
We're just about up on time, Justin, but I had a great time talking with you today. I certainly plan on having you as a regular guest here on the podcast, especially as we get further into the summer, and definitely in the next hunting season. We'll be chatting about how our seasons are going, and our successes and our failures. But again, I want to thank you for taking the time here to be on the show.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. And I will say, of course, this is a trad cast, but I want to say thank you for having me on the show. And I will say also, even if I don't go traditional, I think for the Vantage Point Outdoors side of things, you as traditional and me sticking with compound, may be a good thing. Keep everything, keep the information broad. For the fans out there, the people listening that, some are traditional, some are compound shooters. So maybe that broadness may be a good thing as well. So I'm still not going to rule it out. And, especially down here in Southern Zone, I think it could be something that I may adventure into. So.
Oh, absolutely, Justin. I mean, like you mentioned there, and actually that's a great point. I mean, yes, I created this podcast to focus primarily on the traditional side of things, but without question, if there's some compound shooters out there listening, if this podcast can help them in any way, become a better hunter or a better shot, then I'm all for that as well. And like I said, I mean, the bottom line here is we want to help other hunters and other shooters, no matter what you hunt with. So the bottom line is we just want to help people and we just want to share our stories. But we are going to conclude the show here with that. But be looking forward to some more interviews with Justin as the season goes along. And until the next time, we'll see you right here on the Tradcast.
You got it. Thanks for having me, Chad.
Yes, you too, Justin. Take care.
All right. Bye now.
All right, guys. There you have it. I had a great talk with Justin. I tell you what, you're going to be seeing a lot more of him here on the podcast. We're going to be talking about our experiences as we go throughout the year. But this week here, we just wanted to reflect back on a few things that we do here during the postseason time period, which can help increase your chances into the next coming season. So I just think too many hunters out there get into a lull and a lull of inactivity during these winter months, and they're kind of emotionally drained on hunting, and they kind of forget about it for a few months. But you know what? These winter months, there are some things that you can do that can certainly be beneficial to you and increase your chances going into the next hunting season. But as always, I want to thank you for tuning into the show, and I will see you next Saturday right here on a new edition of the Tradcast.